All right. Hello, Lori. Hello, Kirsten.
Hello.
Welcome to the first ever episode of Keep Me Home Longer, the podcast that we think will provide reassurance and hope for people who want to use home care services to stay in their homes longer. We are going to discuss issues related to home care, the management of health conditions in the home, and general improvement in the quality of life for people who want care in their homes. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, so while this podcast is directed to the more senior members of the population, it does discuss issues that are applicable to anyone that wants to understand the home care services that are available that can improve the quality of life at home for people with medical conditions. Let me get some disclaimers out of the way before doing introductions. I'll try to use my fastest voice possible, just like those TV commercials for pharmaceuticals, when they speak really quickly. Okay. Kirsten, who is a qualified registered nurse, wants me to make clear that nothing in this podcast should be construed as medical advice. Lori, who owns and operates a home care agency in Huntington Beach, California, wants me to make clear that she owns and operates a franchise, Bright Star Care, in Huntington Beach and Costa Mesa, California, and that this franchise is independently owned and operated, but represents a nationwide brand that specializes in a higher quality of home care. She is also keen to emphasize that this is a general educational conversation and not intended to be medical advice of any nature. Did I cover those disclaimers to your satisfaction, guys?
You got an A, Biju.
Thank you. I am always looking for validation. So even if I have to ask for it. Okay, quick intros. So this podcast started with a conversation I had about a year ago with Lori, who I should disclose at this point is my wife. If you couldn't tell that with the last name. The conversation was about a general sense of anxiety that I was feeling about aging and how it would progress. While Lori and I live in California, we had watched my mother have to move out of her apartment into a facility in Australia. And as we talked about the anxiety that I felt associated with that, Lori brought to the table her 10 years of experience in running this home care agency in Huntington Beach and provided, or at least attempted to provide, some reassurance. And in that conversation is when we decided that we should really turn that conversation and this message into a podcast in the event that it might help others that are trying to work things out like I was trying to work out. I should add that the conversation ended with Lori asking me to spend more time in her business, which I agreed to do at a ridiculously low rate of pay, I should add, for anybody listening, in an attempt to pressure her to increase my pay. But it did leave me wanting more in the form of information and assurance. I wanted to do a deeper dive into specific conditions that can be managed in the home and what people needed to know about that. So we added Kirsten to the conversation. And here we are. So my first question is to Lori. Can you give the audience some quick intro points into what made you invest in a home care agency in the first place?
That's a great question. I kind of came to the entire home care industry in kind of a roundabout way. My previous life was actually, Biju, as you know, you and I had a software development house that we developed. And we eventually sold the copyright, came to a large company here in the U.S. and set up their development arm and worked there for quite an extended period of time. And during that time, I went through hospice with my mom, which was the first time that I experienced having any type of health care in the home. And about 3 months later, my dad had a stroke, and we had to get some care for him to be able to stay home. And I really saw how it improved his quality of life. It kind of opened his world back up. And he had that opportunity to stay connected with the world. He could get out, he could still do things. And it really opened my eyes. And after about 12 years, I think, with the company, I decided to be very brave and focus on finding something that allowed me to really get back to connecting with people. So I bought a home care company. I bought a Brightstar. And it's been an amazing journey. Probably my biggest regret is that I didn't find it sooner. I sometimes say that this is an industry where you can satisfy your soul. You know, when we go out and we care for people, we're doing it from the heart. And I think that has been a really good thing for me, something that I am certainly very, very passionate about. So that's my journey.
Makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. My next question is to Kirsten. Kirsten, we decided earlier, for the sake of the audience, we decided earlier that we were going to keep this as a relaxed but educational conversation, which is why we said, no production studios, just keep this at a relaxed way. So we've clearly caught you in your car today. Thank you for doing that. And maybe you'll explain that in a second. But your role at Brightstar Care in Huntington Beach is what's called an ADON. What does that mean, and why should it reduce my anxiety as a potential client getting care in the home from you guys?
Thank you. So the ADON, I am the Assistant Director of Nursing over at Brightstar Care. And the reason it should reduce your anxiety when you're thinking about, having care in your home is that Brightstar Care is one of the only agencies that provides nursing oversight. So you've caught me in my car. What I'm doing right now is, kind of doing the rounds and going and checking on all of my clients. I just left a home doing some medication management and providing some education for our caregivers as well. So having nurse oversight is really important. What I do is go into the home. Initially, before we start care, I do a comprehensive health history and a physical, and together the client and I and any family members design a plan of care that is going to benefit them and is going to be agreeable to them. And I write it up so that the caregivers can follow that plan of care and make sure that all their needs are being addressed.
Okay, thank you. So to both of you, before we started this recording, you told me that your focus this week is on providing education and understanding related to a specific condition, because my understanding is that you have educational focus every couple of weeks on different diagnoses and different medical conditions. And right now you're focused on CHF. Is that correct? It's congestive heart failure.
That is right. CHF, okay. Congestive heart failure, a very common condition in which the heart is just not doing what it needs to do. It's just not pumping adequately. And with that comes a lot of symptoms, and symptoms that with the proper care can be managed in the home. Okay. Yes, that's the focus.
CHF. Okay. CHF. I keep wanting to say contagious heart failure, but that's not correct, right? It's congestive heart failure. It's a good thing that you're the one with the clinical background, Kirsten.
We're glad it's not contagious.
No, exactly. But CHF, which is clinical short term for congestive heart failure. So assume for the moment that I get older and develop this condition. Okay. What specifically can your team help me with in the home?
Good question. So some of the more common symptoms that we see with congestive heart failure are things like weight gain, increased cough, fatigue, shortness of breath. And it's very important that our caregivers are educated to notice these signs and symptoms when they come up. So in the plan of care, I make sure that the caregivers are doing daily weights and they're doing them correctly, and they're reporting those weights to me so that either myself or the family can communicate with the physician, and the physician can intervene to make sure that it doesn't get out of control. We don't want, our primary focus is that the client is comfortable and does not have a hospital readmission. Hospital readmission rates without oversight are actually pretty high with congestive heart failure. It might be somewhere between, around 20%. So,
okay.
yeah. So with proper care and just making sure we're managing things like, daily weights, making sure that they understand the importance of the medications that they're taking and they're taking them on time is very important. And then, kind of doing a balancing act between exercise and rest periods. So, So if you acquired contagious heart failure, congestive heart failure. That's what we would do. Biju, I'd make sure that our caregivers are taking good care of you, and we're going to weigh you daily. We're going to make sure that that they're reporting any signs and symptoms that are outlined specifically in the plan of care, and we're communicating with your physician.
It's interesting you say that about communicating with the physician. So you're not trying to take over the care. You're actually managing the care in conjunction with the physician, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And the physicians are very appreciative when we can intervene quickly and we can say, oh gosh, Mr. Jones has gained 2 pounds since yesterday's weight. The earlier we can intervene, the more minimal the intervention needs to be. So a little adjustment in medication, maybe diet. Diet is so important. And we do spend a lot of time educating the caregivers and the clients on proper diet. Usually for CHF, it's low sodium. And we make sure they can identify the foods, surprisingly, that have high sodium, such as bread. Did you know that most bread has pretty high sodium levels?
I did not know that. I knew that there was a link with carbs, but I didn't understand about the sodium. And honestly, Kirsten, as I'm listening to you, I'm worried that Lori, my wife, is thinking that she needs to start me on this program now, even if I don't have. So expect a call that says, visit me at home and start monitoring my weight.
No more bread, Lori. No more bread.
That's right. No more bread.
Okay. So let's say that I have to go to hospital. So I'm somebody with CHF, your team's taking care of me, but things happen and I have to go to hospital for a stay. Tell me what I need to think about when returning, and how do you help prepare for my return? What do I need to think about? Because you've told me what I need to think about in the home to manage the condition. Okay. What do I need to think about as planning my return?
Okay. So let's say, Biju, we don't want this to happen, but let's say you were readmitted to the hospital. You had some exacerbations of your CHF. You're going to be in the hospital for a little while. Whenever you're in the hospital, you're going to lose endurance. You're going to be a little bit weaker. So I'm going to anticipate that. I'm going to go into the home and make sure, maybe instead of at night walking to the bathroom and risking a fall or some, increased shortness of breath, maybe we're going to get a bedside commode that's near your bed just temporarily at night. So number one, your sleep's not interrupted, because with congestive heart failure, the majority of patients don't get good sleep because of, the fluids, a little bit of fluid in the lungs, and, our sleep apnea. So we want to make sure that your sleep's not interrupted and you're not getting fatigued by trying to, in the middle of the night, get all the way to the restroom. So I think about things like that. What is going to make life easy, make this transition from hospital to home very smooth? The other thing that I do, you're definitely going to have some changes in medication. So I'm going to look at your discharge paperwork, at your discharge medications, and see what those changes are. I'm going to make sure that you understand those changes, and you're taking your medications again properly. And I'll explain and provide some education on why your doctor chose to make these changes and why it's important that you follow the regime.
Fair enough. That makes total sense to me. Lori, Kirsten has described a process that is very high engagement. She's helping people through. But Kirsten is one person. Do you have a team of nurses that work with and caregivers? And how does that whole process work if I'm a potential client?
Yeah, great question. Yes, there absolutely is a team. Kirsten is leading that team and setting the standard, doing the training. So we have a nursing team that's available to go out and do assessments, reassessments. If someone is wanting us to do medication management, we have nurses that can go out and fill pill boxes, coordinate with physicians. Anything to do with medication where we are managing it, the nurses work in conjunction with the physician, get the correct orders so that we're following everything that needs to be followed. In terms of the caregivers, we have quite a large team of caregivers that are highly trained. We bring them in here for in-person training versus just sending video links. An example would be, say, someone using a Hoyer lift. If you've watched a video on how to use it, you really don't know how to use it. You need to be trained hands-on. So we have our staff come in and we do a lot of in-person training, broken into what the state mandates, because there is state mandated training, but we actually go quite a bit above that. We do a lot of additional training in a whole variety of areas to make sure that our staff know that, one, we care enough to invest in them, and two, when they walk out into a client's home, we want to make sure that they're feeling very, very confident.
So when you say Hoyer lift, what is a Hoyer lift?
A Hoyer lift is a piece of equipment that is used if someone is completely bedbound, if they are non-weight bearing, and they need to be moved, say, from the bed to a wheelchair or any transfer that needs to be done. A Hoyer lift is what is used. It can be a very dangerous piece of equipment if you are not fully trained and competencied on the use of it. It is a wonderful piece of equipment if you are trained and you are very comfortable in how to utilize that piece of equipment.
Okay. I think you're doing well to try and give me a sense of why I shouldn't be over anxious. But Kirsten, you describe what you do to prepare me for the return home if I have an episode and need to go to the hospital. What do you do to keep me home? Because in an earlier part of this section, you talked about hospital readmission. Can you just expand on that a little bit, provide a bit more feedback?
Oh, sure. So our primary goal is that you are not going to be readmitted to the hospital. So clearly, you did not utilize home care when you were readmitted. So this time, we're going to make sure that you have caregivers in your home helping you out. And I'm going to, if you're readmitted and then once you're back in the home, I'm going to go through that initial plan of care that I created, and we're going to revamp it. We're going to figure out what can we do, what changes can we make. Maybe it's okay. We really have to reduce more of your sodium level. Let's work on the diet. Are we doing enough exercise? Medication. Are you taking your medication when you're supposed to? And do you understand the importance of it? So, making sure you're getting adequate rest. Yeah, so I'm going to revamp that plan of care and then really do some close check-ins. So I do those oversight visits, and my caregivers are really great about communicating with me if they think that there's something going on. And sometimes I just do pop-in visits to see how things are going. So I think we'll keep a close eye on you, Biju. Make sure we're not going to let you go anywhere. We don't want you going back to that.
Well, if you're doing pop-in visits, I'm making sure I have my best pajamas on. But,
there you go.
Okay.
That's it.
So, thank you. That's actually a good note. You did tell me that you didn't want this to go more than 15 to 20 minutes because I know you guys are having a very busy day and I know you've got people to care for. So I'm really grateful for the time. And this has actually been a useful conversation. I feel better about knowing that there is this kind of service available. Like I said, I'm somewhat biased, I know, but this has not been about a biased exercise. This has been about me trying to understand and then explain to the world what is available. So you've left me on a good note, but I think for the next one, we should just tee up. You said that every couple of weeks you change your focus to educate the population about different conditions. What is your next focus that we should talk about, and I can put into the show notes as something to look forward to?
Oh, great. Yes, I'm very excited. So the next focus of attention is going to be on Parkinson's disease.
Okay. All right. I will make sure that when I publish this podcast that we make it clear that that's the next one to tune into, and I'm hoping that you guys are equally looking forward to that conversation. I want to thank you very much for your time, and we'll be in touch again.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.